All right, so you're looking at what seems like just another mountain in the Rockies, right? Pretty standard stuff. But what if I told you that deep inside, I mean literally carved out of its core, is one of the most secret, most mind-blowing structures ever built by humans? Yeah, we're going inside Cheyenne Mountain. I mean, just let that sink in. A 25-ton door. That's not just a door, it's a statement. This thing is a fortress gate designed to slam shut and seal off the inside from, well, from the end of the world. And believe me, that massive door, that's just the welcome mat. So what's really in there? That's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? And spoiler, it's not just about protecting people or some fancy computers. No, this place was built to protect an idea. The idea that even if the absolute worst happened, if we faced total annihilation, the United States could still function, could still respond. This was designed to be the last place on Earth still standing. Okay, to really get why anyone would even think of building something this insane, we've got to rewind the clock. We're heading back to a time when the entire world was basically holding its breath, living on a knife's edge, the Cold War. So it all kicks off in 1957. The Soviets launch Sputnik, and suddenly, this little beeping satellite is circling the globe. For the US, this was a terrifying wake-up call. For the very first time, the American mainland was wide open to an attack from space. And the scary part? They had no way to see it coming, let alone survive it and fight back. So for 2 years, they ran top-secret studies, and the conclusion was grim. Absolutely nothing built on the surface could survive a nuke. The only way to survive was to go down. Way, way down. So the order came down from the top. Build us a command center that can survive Armageddon. And the answer they came up with? Well, it was beyond audacious. It was almost mythological. They weren't just going to dig a hole and build a bunker. No way. They were going to hollow out a mountain and build an entire city inside solid rock. They looked at nearly 20 different spots, but they kept coming back to Cheyenne Mountain. And the reason why is this number: 2,000 feet. 2,000 feet of solid, ancient, Precambrian granite standing between the inside and the outside world. We're talking rock that's 1.7 billion years old. This wasn't just a building, this was a natural shield, tough enough to shrug off a direct hit. Okay, let's just try to wrap our heads around the scale of this. To build their city inside the mountain, they first had to remove a mountain's worth of rock from the mountain. It's wild. Almost 700,000 tons of granite, blasted, smashed, and dragged out one truckload at a time. And who did all this back-breaking work? This small army of 1,500 people. They lived right there at the base of the mountain, working around the clock 3 shifts a day, in total secrecy. Can you imagine? You couldn't tell your wife, your kids, anyone what you were building. You just went to work inside a mountain every single day. And their daily grind was just this brutal, non-stop cycle. Drill the holes, pack the explosives, boom, clear out the rubble, and then do it all over again. For 14 straight months, that was the heartbeat of the project. And it was smart, too. They set off the charges with tiny, millisecond delays to control the blast, kind of like cracking a whip, to make sure they didn't accidentally bring the whole mountain down on top of themselves. And you gotta understand, this wasn't just chaos and dynamite. It was surgical. The second the dust settled from a blast, teams would rush in to basically bolt the mountain back together. They drilled in over 100,000 giant steel bolts and sprayed everything with a layer of concrete. They were literally pinning the rock in place to make sure it wouldn't move an inch. So hollowing out the mountain, that was just phase 1. A huge challenge for sure. But what came next? Well, that was the real genius. Now they had to build a city inside this giant cave, a city that could somehow survive the planet-shaking shockwave of a nuclear bomb going off right outside. Here's the core problem they had to solve. If you bolt a building directly to the mountain wall, a nuclear shockwave is just going to travel right through the rock and pulverize it. It's like tapping a wine glass with a fork. So what was the answer? Don't touch the walls. At all. They designed 15 buildings that are completely freestanding. They literally had to make the city float. And how do you make an entire city float? On springs. Giant ones. We're talking over 1,300 massive steel coils, each one 3 feet wide. Every single building in there sits on these things. This absolutely brilliant system lets the whole complex sway and move up to a foot in any direction. So when the mountain shakes, the city inside just rides the wave. This place was built to be its own self-sufficient little planet. Those 25-ton blast doors, they can slam shut in 50 milliseconds. That's literally faster than you can blink. And once they're sealed in, they've got everything. Huge water reservoirs, their own power plant with generators the size of trains, and enough food and fuel to keep 800 people alive and working for a month, completely cut off from the rest of humanity. So, they did it. They built the impossible fortress. But that's not the end of the story, not even close. For the next 60-plus years, this place has stood a silent watch, constantly adapting as the threats outside its doors changed and evolved. It officially went live in 1966, not with a big party, but with a quiet entry in a top-secret logbook. In 1979, it almost started World War III by accident when a training simulation was mistaken for a real Soviet missile launch. Yikes. Then came 9/11, and in an instant, its mission flipped from watching for Soviet missiles over the pole to tracking hijacked airliners inside America. And more recently, in 2015, a lot of critical jobs moved back into the mountain because it turns out it's the best place on Earth to survive an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse that could wipe out all our electronics. So after all of that, the blasting, the building, the decades of standing guard in secret, how do you even measure if a place like this was a success? Well, the answer is kind of profound. You don't measure it by what it did. You measure it by what it prevented. And what's just mind-boggling is how well the original design has held up. It's like a time capsule of perfect engineering. The blast doors, they test them every month, and they slam shut just as fast as they did on day one. Those 1,319 springs, they're all the originals, still doing their job. 60 years on, and the core of the facility is basically unchanged. They just got it that right the first time. Which brings us back to that ultimate measure of success. For decades, through the absolute hairiest moments of the Cold War, the men and women inside that mountain kept watch. And their final score? The most important number in this entire story? It's 0. 0 nuclear wars started. And that's the real takeaway here, you know? The true legacy of this place isn't the amazing engineering or the millions of tons of rock they moved. It's the quiet decades it helped to ensure. NORAD's greatest achievement isn't a battle won. It's the profound global silence of a war that never came. That's powerful. It really makes you think about all the other invisible systems and structures out there, quietly working in the background to keep us safe every single day. Things we never see, protecting people who will never even know they exist. So, what else is out there, standing a silent